My name is Jun Baklaan, and my topic is the if function. So I'll be introducing that to you. So what is an if function? Well, an if function is a conditional function that returns either true or false as a base value. The only true or false. It's good for checking only one condition. Do note that the true or false values are customizable, but I'll get into that a little bit later. It's similar to the if function shown in coding or programming, so if you have coding or programming experience, it's pretty straightforward. The breakdown of the if function is shown here. Equals if, and then in parentheses you have your conditional, so checking to see if two things are comparing or contrasting. Then you have your true value or your false value. You can compare two numerical values or two text values in your conditional, and the true or false values may either be numerical or text. So in order to demonstrate this, I'm going to show you the programming perspective, so what it looks like through programming, and then I'm going to show it to you through Excel. So what I have here is just a generic Java class file, and I'm just going to be demonstrating the if function. So here I'm just gonna make just some generic values to compare, and then the if function is going to have three main things. Here's your conditional in the parentheses here. If let's look for if I, which is 5, is less than 12. So if I is less than compare, then you have your true value. We'll just have it say true for an example. Then you have your false value, which is the else. We'll have it say false. And this is just for Java, but in many other programming languages like Python and C++, I won't get into the specifics, but they all have their own unique if function structures. So if we run it, then we'll see that 12 is greater than 5. Well, 5 is less than 12, so it will return true. If we want to do it the other way, it should return false, and it does. So here we have the if function examples that we went over in class, and here we have our pass or fail example. It's very simple. Here we have our reference point, which is 70. This will be our passing score that we're going to use for the conditionals. Then we have our generic student names as well as their scores. We're going to see if they're going to be passing or failing. To pass, they need to have a score that is greater than or equal to 70. So for example, we have Chemo here who has a score of 70, and they pass. The way I set this up is by using the if function by comparing the cell B4 to the constant D2. Of course, you can also change this to just 70, and it'll have the same effect. And then the true value is pass, and then the false value is, of course, fail. And it's basically the same for all of these. So now let's talk about nested ifs, or as I like to call them, else ifs. So what exactly are nested ifs? To add some context, if functions can be nested, so they are put inside of other if functions. Note that nested ifs must be put in the false value of the if function before it. So the structure would be if, then your conditional, then your true value, then instead of having a false value, you have another if function. There is no limit to how much you can nest, and nested ifs should only be used if you have 2 or more conditionals you have to check. The reason I say else ifs is because they're similar in concept to the else ifs in programming. And the breakdown is here. Equals if your conditional, then your true value, and then the nested if, which has its own conditional, true value, and false value. So let's look at this from the programming perspective, and then we'll look at it from the Excel perspective. I added another variable x, which is equal to 7. And here, to simulate nested ifs, I'm going to use what is called in Java the else if. So here it's basically just like an if function, but if this is false, then it checks this. And if this is also false, then it'll print out this. So let's say we'll make I plus x, and we'll see if that's equal to 12. And we'll have it print out very true if it's true. So we'll see what happens. Press run, and then it prints out very true. Notice how it goes. It tries to check this, but since this is false, it doesn't print out true. It goes to the else if to check this. And since this is true, then it prints out very true. If I remove this and try running it, then we're gonna have the exact same thing that happened last time. It'll print out false because I is less than 12. So here we have an easy example of nested ifs. So in this one, we're going to be checking if the value that is given is either negative, null, or positive. Null means 0 in this case. So in order to figure this out, we have to use a nested if. And the structure looks like this. If A2, which is the cell that we have selected, is greater than 0, then it returns positive. Else, and this is where the nested if comes in, else if A2 is equal to 0, then it returns null. Else, it returns negative. So in this case, it'll return negative. Since A3 is equal to 0, then it will return null. And since A4 is greater than 0, it's positive. Note that just like in the programming program, it checks each one individually before moving on. So before going straight to this, it checks if this conditional first. So in conclusion, an if function is a conditional function that returns either a true or false value. These if functions can be nested inside of each other, and the conditions may have only numbers or only text, and they may compare, contrast, or have other functions within them. For example, these functions may be able to do math, and then you can compare, contrast for a conditional. Please keep in mind that the values may only be numerical or only have text. Regular if functions are good for checking only one condition. Nested if functions, on the other hand, are good for checking 2 or more conditions. And nested if functions can check up to basically infinite conditions. Other than that, that's it. Thank you.